Hey everybody, this is Youth Ministry with Tyshone Roland, and today is episode 5 on how to grow your youth ministry. But before we get started in today's episode, I want to give you a book recommendation, Who's Your Ann by Daniel Fernandez. In fact, cool thing, Pastor Daniel Fernandez used to be my youth pastor. I remember, I think I was 19 years old when he came to take over the youth ministry, and then I trained under him along with a lot of my friends. We trained and learned a lot of things about youth ministry, and I have to give it up to Pastor Daniel. He taught me a lot of great things, especially when it comes to my preaching, leading. But when it comes to discipleship, if I close my eyes and I ask myself who has taught me the most about discipleship, it would have to be Pastor Daniel Fernandez. And so I want to encourage every youth pastor, if you're trying to grow your youth ministry in the areas of small groups, if you're trying to make an environment that leaders are actually pastoring the students, this is the book you want. He didn't ask me to do this, but I'm doing this. So I want everyone to get Who's Your Ann by Pastor Daniel Fernandez. In fact, the first 10 people that order this book, you ordered the book. I'm not giving you anything except the book. So just go order the book and it'll be a blessing to you. So I'm so excited today to talk about the thing that most youth pastors want to learn, and that is how to grow your youth ministry, how to grow your youth ministry numerically, specifically speaking. And so what I like to do is I want to go to the Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 3 through 6. I'm going to read those verses, and then after this, we're going to break them down a little bit. Then we're going to talk about the thing you really want to learn. I know the first few episodes, you're like, that's good. The conference stuff is great. Discipleship is good, but growth is what we want to talk about. So with that subject in mind, go to 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 3. For you are still of the flesh. For while there is jealousy and strife among you, you are not of the flesh and behaving only in a human way. For when one says, I follow Paul, and another says, I follow Apollos, are you not merely human? What then is Apollos? What is Paul? Servants, through whom you believed, as the Lord assigned to each. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. God gave the growth. And I want to talk about this today because right here we get the seeds of growth and we also get the standards of growth. There's 3 things that Apostle Paul is laying out that we need. Evidently, we need to plant something, we need to water something, but at the end of the day, it's going to be God making it grow. Paul planted the seed. Apollos watered the seed, but ultimately God made it grow. And I think a lot of times we want to learn the secrets of growth, but very rarely do we even know the standards of growth. And the standards of growth is that it takes time and it takes things and it takes God. That's what, when I read this verse, that's what I see. It takes seeds, it takes time, and it takes God. And at the end of the day, no matter what you hear in this podcast or in another podcast, you can't skip that phase. You can't skip the standard of growth. There are certain things that every ministry is just going to need to grow. And those things will be God, and those things will be time. I have had an opportunity over the last few months, especially over this last year, stepping in to the role as an evangelist, to go to a lot of youth ministries. And I've seen some youth ministries that have 30, 40, 50 kids, but I've seen some youth ministries that are running 500, 600, even over 1,000. And for those ones that have really big youth ministries, I like to ask the youth pastor the question, before the service starts. I look at them like, hey, you said when you booked me that, there's going to be 700 in attendance. Now, are you telling the truth? Because some people say 700 and I get there and there's 200, but I'm grateful because I still get to preach the gospel. But I'll go to some that will say 700. And then by the end of the night, we have something like 900 or 1,000. I'll ask them, how did you grow this youth ministry? How did this happen? Usually a lot of them will hit me with the holy yay shrug, like, I don't know. I really don't know, but we just tried this. But usually what happens, if they want to be helpful, and usually they do, and they walk in humility, they'll end up telling me something along the lines of like, bro, we just stick to this and we did this over time. And before we knew it, we grew, and for some of them, I thought it took them about a year because Instagram made it seem that way. But they'll tell me, actually, you know what? It was my youth pastor before me. There was a Paul. And then there was me watering what that Paul taught me. I'm the Apollos. But over the last few weeks and the last few years, we've experienced growth. But honestly, to God be the glory. It's been ultimately up to God. And I just want to say this for somebody. You got to know that there's certain things you can't control. What you can't control is how fast you grow, when you grow, or if you grow. what I love about 1 Corinthians, it tells us that Paul did do something. He planted. Apollos did do something. He watered. It's not like they just sat there and did nothing. But at the end of the day, they couldn't control the actual growth of the ministry. That was God. And as I think about growing, I want to give an example of what growing a youth ministry looks like. It was around summer of 2021 that I was traveling a little bit, and as I was traveling, I like to watch, like when life gets fast for me and I don't know how to slow it down, I like to watch old movies. There's something about watching an old movie that takes me back to a place, and then I'm like, I remember where I was when I watched it the first time, and I've just seen God's faithfulness. I know we all have our weird things, but that's one of my weird things. And I was watching You Got Served. In the summer of 2021, and I'm like, you know what? I'm about to start crumping and dancing right now. And I saw Marion in there, and I saw him with his cornrows, and I said, you know what? I want braids. It was in the summer of 2021 that it really got into me. So August, I was like, I'm going to start growing my hair out to get braids. Now, I tried to get them in November, but they looked so ugly. I'm not even going to show you a photo because I was stretching for those cornrows at that time. But now it's March of 2023. When I get cornrows, they actually look like what I wanted them to look like when I had this dream in August of 2021. What I know about this is that the desire to get cornrows happened in an instant, but it took a while to deliver it over time. And what you have to know is that your desires of growth are good. They can happen in an instant. You can be faithful with your numbers. You could be okay with what you have. And then you go to a conference or you wake up one day or you're preaching and you're like, I really want the youth ministry to grow to X, Y, and Z. You have this number. Maybe for you, you want to grow to 70. Maybe for you, you want to grow to 150. Maybe you're one of those people that 300 is the number that you're facing right now. You really want to grow. Listen, the desire is immediate. But for those results to happen, they will be delivered over time. They may be delivered to the next person in control. So you may be the Paul, you may be the one planting, you may be the one plowing, you may be the one planting. But then after doing that for a few years, you may give the youth ministry off to the next guy or the next girl, and they may be the one watering the very work that you sowed, and then they get the growth. It doesn't mean that God was more on them and he wasn't on you. It just means that at that time, that's what God was doing. God is going to grow it whenever he wants to grow it. But just know, at the end of the day, it's going to take time and it's going to take patience. And one of the things I want to put on here before we get into how to grow, I know there's someone that wants to just forward this video, give me the secrets. I'll give you the secrets in a second. But before we talk about how to grow, we got to talk about measuring growth. I've seen this happen to a lot of youth pastors, is that in their desire to grow, they measure the right thing the wrong way. And this is what I mean by that. You had 76 last week. On Wednesday, you counted twice, you tried to push for 87, but it was 76. That was the number. And you're like, okay, next week I need to get to 78. If I get to 78, I'm going to feel great. And then the next week, you're not at 78, you're actually at 54. And because you're at 54, now you're questioning everything in your life. Is God with you? Is God for you? Are you going to get fired? And then the very next week, you're like, I got to get back to that 70 number. Now you're at 62. You're like, all I needed was 8 more. Are you sure it wasn't 70? Can you go count again? And you're getting so overwhelmed because you're grading the right thing the wrong way. It's good for you to look at growth, but it probably is not as good for you to look at it week to week. One of the things I noticed when I became the youth pastor is that I cared about that number. Like youth started at 7. I needed that number by 8:55. I needed that number. I wanted to know what that number was. And before I knew it, I found myself more preoccupied with a number than even preoccupied with learning here's alliteration, the names of the students. And I'm going to be serious. It's alliteration, but it was also true. I was so concerned with, did we grow? I didn't care who it was. I didn't know their names. I didn't need to know their names. I needed to know if that number was up. And I realized this early on as a youth pastor. I am not going to be controlled by a number. I'm just not. And so I do need to know if I'm growing. That doesn't mean that if you're not controlled by a number, you just make the decision, well, I don't need to grow. That's a bad attitude. You're being a poor steward. You still need to be aiming to grow the youth ministry, not just seemingly sustain the youth ministry. But I don't think you should obsess with the number. I don't think that you should be looking, okay, every week, what's that number? What's that number? I think instead of grading yourself week to week, what if you grade yourself month to month? What if every 4 times you look at that number and see, okay, this week we had 70, the next week we had 72, the other week we had 64, the other week we had 89. Wow, I could feel really great about that 89, but actually let me just zoom out, look at these 4. What's the average? Am I growing? Okay, I am growing. Wow, I'm actually growing by 10 every week. I didn't notice that because you can't see that week to week. But if you zoom out, you could grade accordingly. So don't grade your youth ministry sporadically. Don't pick and choose to care about numbers when you want to care about numbers. Care about numbers all the time, but zoom out. Look for a pattern, because if you look at a pattern, now you can notice the trajectory. Are we growing? Are we not growing? Now we can notice the consistencies. I notice that the second Wednesday of the month, we're always hitting this number. Why are we always hitting this number? From patterns, you can measure inconsistencies. It seems like on the third week of every month, we go down substantially. What is that? You don't see that looking from week to week. You see that looking from month to month. You see that when you zoom out to every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks, and you begin to notice patterns. So as you're grading your growth, don't grade your growth sporadically. Grow it by a pattern. Grow it every 6 weeks, because you will feel like a failure looking to numbers week to week, but you will feel like a success looking at numbers every 6 weeks. You may notice that you're actually growing if you look that far in the future. And if you don't look that far in the future, you're going to be controlled by the present number. And I don't want you to be controlled by that present number. I want to say it this way. No matter how great your church is, no matter how great your preaching is, no matter how great your strategy is, you will come to the conclusion that growth is ultimately up to God. No matter what, no matter if you've been a youth pastor for 5 minutes, 5 months, or 5 years, you're going to learn this really quick, that growth is controlled by God. Now, what I do love about this text, it does tell us a few things that we're in charge of. Evidently, Paul is planting something. Apollos is watering the thing that Paul is planting. So we can say that as a season, doesn't matter where you are, at the end of the day, we're just servants. It doesn't matter if you're the planter, and it doesn't matter if you're the waterer. And I think sometimes I do see youth pastors getting a little frustrated. I've talked to a youth pastor the other day, and he was a phenomenal youth pastor. I believe he was in the youth ministry world for about 7-8 years, and he did a phenomenal job, raised up some leaders. But one of the leaders that he raised up is doing a phenomenal job as a youth pastor right now. They're growing. There's a few things they need to work on, but when it comes to the basic things as a youth pastor needs to win, this guy is already winning in all those areas. And I know why he's winning in all those areas. It's not necessarily that he's that talented or that gifted. He had a Paul that went before him that prepared him for the work he's actually doing right now. Now, the guy that's no longer a youth pastor, he looks at him and he almost is like, man, I wish I had his season instead of having my season. No, at the end of the day, we're all servants. Some of us are the servants that get to plow, and some of us are the servants that get to reap. But at the end of the day, just know that you're just a servant. I remember being a youth pastor at a few different places, and to be honest, I'm not going to lie, I got the benefit of going into fields that I knew Apostle Paul was there previously before me. I just knew that every time I became a youth pastor, I was never the first youth pastor, and there was benefits from not being the first youth pastor. They already have a preconceived notion of what the job is. They already have a preconceived notion of what the events are. They kind of know where we're going. So all the plowing that I had to do, someone did it before me. I'm so grateful for every youth pastor that came before me because it made my job very easy. Now, when you are a guy that had a Paul come before you, you also come into a good youth ministry. You come into a youth ministry with some leaders. You come into the youth ministry with some volunteers. Sure, it's not what you want it to be, but it's a lot easier having something than starting something from scratch. So if you step into a season and you're like an Apollos, be grateful for your Paul. And if you're in your season as a Paul, just know Apollos is coming soon and your break is on his horizon. But either way, God is going to grow the youth ministry. But we know that Paul does give us a few seeds. We know that Paul does give us a few things. And I remember being told this as I was a young man. I am a young man. I'm turning 30 this year. I don't know why I said it that way. But even when I was like 12 or 13, everyone would tell me this, whether it was at school. It was usually more at school than it was at church. They would just say, Tyshone, you ask really good questions. You can put together the right question. And the reason that I like asking questions is because I was told that leaders were learners, and you only can learn by asking a good question. It's not just asking any question. I think it's asking a good question. Someone told me this the other day, and I hear this a lot. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I'm not going to say there's a stupid question, but we've all had someone ask a question and you're like, man, I don't know if that was the right question to ask. I'm one of those people that I am fully prepared to meet any hero in my life, whether it's Dave Chappelle, whether it's Bishop Jakes, whether it's Craig Rochelle. I don't care who it is. I have a prepared question because I just feel like if I'm going to get 5 minutes with you, it's going to be 5 minutes that I ask a question that unlocks something, hopefully not just in me, but hopefully the right question can unlock something in you. And I think there's some questions that we can ask in ministry that can help us grow in the areas where we have a wall. And I like to put questions in this category. There's right questions, and then there's blind questions. The right question is going to be the thing that gives you the answer you're actually looking for. The right question will give you the detail that's the missing piece that will get you the victory that your soul's been searching for. The right question will unlock the mind of the leader that's above you. The right question can get you a promotion. I'm telling you, there is something powerful about the right question. There's also blind questions. I think a lot of us ask, when I hear people talking, when I watch interviews, I love watching interviews, but I see people interviewing people of great leadership, of great experience, of great expertise, and they ask them blind questions. Who's your biggest inspiration? What a blind question. How about who was the person that inspired that act in that season of your life? Because usually who that person who was a great inspiration in 2004 probably isn't a great inspiration anymore. But it's you having the wherewithal to ask the right questions. And I see this happening a lot. We know that we're not growing, right? So in some seasons of your life, you'll get rewarded just for knowing that there's a problem. I think when you're young in leadership, the goal is, do you know that there's a problem? If you can just be aware of that, promotion will come to you, because you'll walk in a room where everyone else thinks everything's working, but you're like, hey, there's something off. That's a leader's intuition. You having the ability to know that there's something off that's in the room says so much about you. The next level is, can you tell me what's going on with why the room is not right? This is the person that can find the problem. And a lot of people will get hired if you just know what the problem is. If you are aware of the problem, it's like, okay, at least they know why. At least they can feel it. Not only they can feel it, they know why. But now the next level, and this is really where I see a lot of leaders struggling with. You know the problem. The problem is we're not growing. You click this episode specifically because you're like, I want my youth ministry to grow. What is the problem? We're not growing. Now, the next thing you need to do is ask yourself the right question, not a blind question. I'm going to give you an example of what I think some blind questions are. And if I didn't do a good job explaining which one is which, I want to do that as well right now. Blind questions give more attention to the problem, and there's too many options to answer. So that's what a blind question is. A right question gives more details to the problem, then in turn invites the answer. So we got people right now that click this YouTube video, they click this podcast because you're not growing. You probably are asking yourself some questions that are probably blind questions, but they sound good. These are the questions that I wrote down. Why aren't we growing? That's a blind question. Why is that a blind question? Because there's so many ways I can answer to that. Tell me what day you meet. Tell me what your experience looks like. Tell me what's going on the same time you're meeting. Tell me what happens every time they show up. Tell me what experience you offer. There's so many reasons we can answer why are we not growing. Another blind question that I see a lot of people that are struggling with growth ask: where are all the kids at? What do you mean where are all the kids at? They're where they're supposed to be, in school or at the mall or at a party or working or at practice or chilling at home playing video games. There's so many ways we can answer these questions. What thing should we give away? You know how many meetings I've been in that we spend 30 minutes on, okay, are we giving away AirPods or Yeezys? Which ones are we? Well, we gave away the last generation ones. Well, what about the ones over here? How much are those? 400? Oh, we ain't giving those away. We ain't doing that. What are we giving away? We're using our best creative energy for graphics. Those are the questions we're using our best creative energy for. We're using our questions to what to put on the graphic sheet. And these aren't necessarily the best questions. They're blind questions. Another blind question. Why doesn't the senior pastor say anything in the youth ministry? Why is it none of the pastors saying anything except me? That's a blind question. I'll give you another one. This is one that I hear a lot from a lot of youth pastors. And when they ask this question, they feel like they're philosophical. Why aren't students inviting their friends to the youth ministry? All these questions that I just asked are all blind questions. Blind questions will never lead you to clarity. They never will. They never have, and they never will. The right questions, I was going to say the white questions, the right questions will lead you to clarity. And here's a few examples. Now, I wrote the 5 blind ones. Now I wrote the 5 right ones. Instead of asking, why aren't we growing? Here's a better question to ask. Why aren't the kids that come on Sunday coming on Wednesday? That's a good question to ask. Why aren't the kids that the parents bring every Sunday, that see me every Sunday, they come all the time on the weekends with their parents? Why don't they come on Wednesdays? That question will make you do something that a lot of us pastors don't like doing. Think. Man, are we talking to them on Sunday? When the students show up, do they see the leader that they're also going to see on stage on Wednesday? When they show up on Sunday, do we have a specialized experience for them if they are between the ages of 11 and 18? Do we have a special seating section for them? Do we make them a priority on Sunday? How can we say we have a place for them on Wednesday when you don't even have a spot for them on Sunday? It makes you think. Instead of us asking these blind questions, let's ask the right questions, because the right questions is going to lead us to clarity. Okay, another great question to ask. Instead of asking, where are the kids at? A question that we can ask is, do we have an inviting atmosphere on Wednesdays? Is this even inviting? Let's not talk about where the kids are. Let's talk about, if the kids were to come here, what would greet them? Will they be greeted by a weird leader? We all know who those weird leaders are. I love you. We need you. We appreciate you. But you got to go in the back because we don't know about you right now. Do we have an environment that when a parent shows up on Wednesday, do they see a lot of adults? That shows that this is a trusted environment. Is the environment inviting to parents? Again, these questions, all they're doing is making you ask yourself, a youth pastor, great questions that's going to challenge you to grow, that's going to invite growth in your youth ministry. Here's a question that a lot of people ask. What things should we give away? That's a blind question. Here's a good question. Are we incentivizing the right things? I know we're going to give away an AirPod, but why are we giving away those AirPods again? We're giving away those AirPods because if they invite the most people to this one invite night, they're going to win. So we're teaching them, as long as you get something out of inviting people to church, you're going to get rewarded. How about we incentivize something else? Let's not incentivize who comes first. Let's incentivize who comes again and again and again. Can we incentivize the person that brings the same person for 4 times in a row? You bring the same person 4 times in a row, you'll receive something. What are you teaching them? You're not teaching them to invite them once a month. You're teaching them to invite them once a week. So now you're training them, even in your incentivizing, you're instructing them on what to do, even when there's not a prize on the other side of it. So now you're training them to invite them all the time instead of just training them to invite them once a month. I think a lot of times we do these giveaways because they're Hail Marys for growth. And I think instead of trying to do a Hail Mary, just run a simple play. Invite them every week. Invite them every week. Are we incentivizing the right thing? Another question, instead of asking, why doesn't the senior pastor mention the youth ministry? Here's a question to ask yourself. Have I made my senior pastor aware of what's going on in the youth ministry? Am I telling the senior pastor, hey, pastor, we're growing. Right now, it would really help if you would talk about X, Y, and Z. Hey, pastor, just want you to know that we had kids that were showing up that were addicted to pornography. They've been set free at the altars. Hey, pastor, we had young girls that were coming that were struggling with body image, but now they're secure in their image in Christ. Hey, pastor, we have some students that didn't grow up with a father, but we have a small group where we offer people in our church that have wisdom to offer wisdom to young men and young ladies that don't have a father figure at home. Give your senior pastor wins to share on the weekend that will make it easy for him to prioritize the youth ministry. These are all things that, again, are making you think. A bad question to ask is, why don't students invite people to church? A good question to ask is, have I taught them to invite students to church? Have you even gone out of your way as a youth pastor? Yeah, sure, I taught them. When did you teach them? Did you do a sermon series on the power of invitation? Did you explain that the greatest things you've ever experienced, someone invited you into it? That your love for music is because someone invited you into it? The love for video games, someone invited you into it? I remember the day Someone walked past me, I'll never forget, and I'm so mad at him for doing this. It's stolen so much of my time. But I'll never forget the day that I was working at work. Jonathan Joseph walked over to me and said, download Fortnite. My life has never been the same. He invited me into something, and I'm so grateful that you did, JJ. Ready up, I'll meet you in the lobby. Dubs, dubs, dubs. How many crowns you got? Okay? We all have to be invited into something great. You don't just show up one day. And for the people that do just show up, we wonder why they're there, okay? So everyone needs to be invited in. And these are just questions. I'm going to give you 7 things that I think you could do to really grow your youth ministry. But more than giving you these 7 ideas, I hope I gave you one way to always invite growth into your ministry. Teach your leaders, teach yourself. Don't just ask blind questions. Ask the right questions. Ask questions that require you to dig within yourself, go through your mind, ask yourself tough questions to get an answer that maybe is the right thing that you need for your youth ministry. So that was just kind of a precursor to what I want to talk about. I want to talk about 7 things. These are 7 things that you can sow every year. And I believe as you sow these 7 things, and as even you as a youth pastor, or maybe the next pastor, or even your leaders, as they water these 7 things, I actually really do believe that you will have growth. I'm not promising growth overnight, but I am going to promise growth over time. I think these 7 things are really going to help you out. So number 1, to grow your youth ministry, I encourage you to partner with your children's pastor. Partner with your children's pastor. This is why. Right now, as you're reaching these middle schoolers and high schoolers for the glory of God, preparing them for the real world, preparing them for college, preparing them for internship and whatever happens next in their life, the children's pastor is also doing the same. He is from nursery all the way up to elementary. He is teaching them the things of God. And what he has right now is probably, at least 30 fifth graders that are going to graduate this year, or maybe even 150 fifth graders are going to graduate this year if you're at a big church. Now, you have 30 to 100 fifth graders that are leaving the children's ministry. Do you have an active plan right now with the children's pastor to get them from the elementary children's ministry to the middle school or high school ministry? Do you have that plan? If you don't have that plan, can you create that plan? Because if you create that plan, every August, like clockwork, you're going to get more students coming to your youth ministry because you have an existing plan right now to make sure that when they leave 5th grade, they're going to go into the process of the middle school that starts at 6th grade. I think that we need to get a lot of children's pastors and youth pastors to work with each other. I think between the children's pastor and the youth pastor and the young adult pastor, that's the plan for the next generation of the church. If the children's pastor is doing what he's doing, and he has an active plan to get them from the children's ministry to the middle school and high school ministry, and then the youth pastor is doing what he's doing, he can create a plan to get them from the middle school and high school ministry to the young adult ministry. And every year, every youth ministry, every ministry is going to experience growth. Why? Because we made a plan for it. So the way that you grow your youth ministry right now is go talk to those 5th graders on the weekend. Go have your leaders serve in the children's ministry to get them familiar with your face, so when they start serving in the middle school ministry, there's someone there that's familiar with them. Let's start a plan right now. And this one way, I'm telling you, like every year, you will experience growth. Number 1 is just partnering with the children's ministry. Number 2, plan invite nights after a big event at the church. Now, this is why I say after a big event at the church, because at the end of the day, all you have is the church's momentum to use. That's the only thing you can control. You know that if I was a youth pastor, matter of fact, even right now, Easter is coming. Easter is on its way. And we know that Easter and Christmas and Mother's Day are the 3 events that church attendance always skyrockets. So you probably can't do anything after December. But if I was a youth pastor right now, I would have a plan after Easter. I would have a plan so all my leaders that are showing up on the weekend of Easter say, hey guys, make sure that you're there available to put out chairs, make sure you're available to help in the children's ministry, but make sure every young person you see, you invite them this Wednesday to this event that we're doing, because we know that they're coming, we know that they're already here, we can have a specialized experience for them. Why? Now you're partnering with the church. Now you're planning a big invite with the momentum that's coming from the church instead of trying to plan and pick momentum. We can't pick momentum as youth pastors. I know that we want to, but at the end of the day, your kids may not care about the priorities that you have, but naturally they're going to care about what their parents are going to. So I would encourage every youth pastor, look at your church calendar. After this sermon, after this podcast, go to your pastor, find out what are all the big events. When are we going to be inviting the most families? During the summer, we're probably doing some family-based events. That would be good to have some youth-based events. I know that after Easter, we're going to have an explosive growth. We should probably do an invite night. Can we get a guest speaker to come in for this? Can we do X, Y, and Z because they're already going to be here? Now you can deploy your leaders that are there on Sundays to get in front of all those students. And now you can invite them in front of their parents. Nothing like peer pressure, like parental pressure. Now you're having mom invite you to church every Wednesday. That hits different. It just really, really does. And I remember every leader that walked up to my mom saying, we have this for them this week. My mom would make sure, get my demon son there because I need him to get saved. So partner with the big events of the church. If you know there's a lot of young people coming every Sunday, make sure that you're doing your due diligence to invite them to the Wednesday night experience right there. And I say Wednesday night because I have my youth ministry on Wednesday night. I know there's some Friday nights, Saturday nights. Those who do it on Saturday, you're a big deal. I don't know how you can do that. But I wrote this down. Don't make the next thing too far away from the church's momentum. And I see that happening a lot. So we have something happening on Easter. You know they're coming on Easter, but your next big event is in the middle of May. No, your next big event is after the last church's big event because that's just free momentum. It's not that far away, and you're teaching your leaders to honestly talk to the students that are present on Sundays instead of praying for kids that aren't present to come on Wednesdays. And so number 3, incentivize who comes back, not who comes first. Incentivize who comes back, not who comes first. What I love back in the day in school when I was going to school is I always found it interesting that there was a person that could win an award even if they had bad grades. It was called perfect attendance. Like, you didn't even have to be there. You didn't have to be good. You just had to be present. Like, what did you get? Perfect attendance. You got straight Fs, but you showed up every day and we rewarded your attendance. And I think we should do that in church. I think we should stop awarding people's presence and start rewarding good attendance. If a person shows up for the first time and you give them these AirPods, they're going to take those AirPods and may never come back. In theory, we think they're going to come back, but they probably will never come back. They're going to take those AirPods, either sell them if they have another pair of them, pawn them, or they're going to take them and say, man, this was good. And next time I go to that youth group, hopefully they'll have another thing for me, instead of just incentivizing people who come again and again and again. This is the one thing that I really don't think I ever did as a youth pastor. If I could go back, this is something that I would try. I would try to teach a system of showing kids, hey, if you come every 4 weeks, like here's an idea. I know there's a lot of kids like myself that they're going to the youth ministry every week and they don't even have a lot of money. That's why they're coming to the youth ministry. It's like free fun and they get to be around people. And honestly, a lot of people don't know there's a good amount of kids coming to your youth ministry because it's free. They're like, hey, every week my friend's going to be there. I hear they're going to give pizza every now and again. You want to come? Yeah, they're giving away stuff. Like, that's where they're coming. I think it would be cool if we knew that if you come 8 times in a row, then you'll get a percentage off of your camp experience. You'll get a percentage off for your conference experience. Now you're incentivizing, hey, if you come every week and you're always showing up and you're always having good attendance, we'll award that by giving you a discounted camp experience, a discounted church experience, a discounted conference ticket. If we incentivize those things, it blesses on both ends. Number one, we're teaching them to come all the time. And then number 2, even the way we're incentivizing is another church experience. So now we're not incentivizing saying, hey, if you invite 13 friends, we're going to give you AirPods. We're incentivizing, hey, if you show up 18 times consistently, you get 20% off on camp. And we know, man, those camp tickets are expensive. If you give 20% off a $200 ticket, that's $40. Parents are going to make their kids show up every week simply to take off those $40. So I think there's different ways to incentivize. And if us doing that, we're going to do things that promote growth. And this promotes growth consistently. Everything I'm going to share with you are things that can happen consistently. These are not just, hey, we tried that once. No, you can do this with every youth camp, youth conference. If there's something that you guys are going to be doing that requires payment, you can just say, hey, if you're showing up this amount of time, we'll get this for free. And that really will help you out. If they're doing this in the school system and it's keeping kids showing up, I think we should do it in the church systems to keep kids showing up. And just like kids who are failing in school, at least they're there. The beauty is that if they're showing up at church, hey, at least they're there. At least we're getting the word of God in them. At least they're lifting up holy hands. At least they're seeing the power of God at work. So let's incentivize them coming to church every week, not just once a month. Number 4, get it on the schedule. And what do I mean by that? I know that when I was in high school and middle school, my first week going back to school, you know what they gave me? An agenda. You know what my agenda told me? Everything that was going on for the rest of the semester. It's day 1 and we're already talking about December. I'm just happy to show them my outfit that I picked out the night before and I went to sleep next to them, and then now I'm reading. Man, you guys already have a plan for December? Why did they do that? Because they wanted the students to go home to tell their parents, this is when the tests are, this is when the report cards come out, this is when the games are, this is when homecoming are, this is when all the big events, so you can take this home to your parents. Their parents can orient your schedule around what the school is doing. So now for the whole year, you actually have a plan. I think we should mimic this at church. When young people are starting to come to church in August, I think we should have a plan. Hey, once a month, we're having this event. Once every 2 months, we're going to be doing X, Y, and Z. We're having camp on these dates. I know it's August, but let's get December in front of you right now. Take this to your parents. Let your parents know why. So your parents who care about raising their kids with the biblical worldview can be fully aware of all the events in the church. And now you have the parents working with you simply because you got it on schedule. Oftentimes what happens is that we don't have things planned ahead enough. And because it's not planned ahead, the parents aren't aware. Because the parents aren't aware, they make a schedule for their kids' time. And now you're asking a parent to cancel their plans because you weren't good at stewarding yours. So let me encourage you, get it on the schedule. Make August, you even put it on the Instagram, have it pinned. Maybe when we go on Instagram, you can just see right there, hey, this is everything going on this month. Swipe to be aware of this month. What is this doing? It's allowing the students with their parents to schedule things and plan things. I've just learned that anything that a youth pastor really plans usually is successful. I'll give an example. Usually, most youth conferences that I go to, majority of them are successful. And I know why they're successful, because they've probably been planning those things for the last 6 to 8 months, if not 12 months. They were thinking about getting kids registered. They were thinking about having volunteers show up. They were thinking about all these different things that they should be thinking about. If you haven't, go listen to that other episode of me talking about how to have a youth conference, because there's a lot of things you need to be planning about. But the reason that the youth conference is great is because it was planned over time. And you made sure to put this in front of the parents to make sure, hey, we got to get registrants there. We got to get registrants there. We got to get registrants there. What if we have that mentality all the time? Not just for conference, but if we have it every week and we get this schedule to the students in turn and get that to the parents. And in turn, what we can do also is that we can get it in the church system. Now we can ask the church admin, whoever sends out the emails, hey, can you send this out every month? Because I want the parents to get it. I want those that donate to the ministry to see it. I want people to be fully aware. You can grow if you schedule it. If you're trying to plan an invite night because you saw it on Instagram that they did one last week and you're decided to do one next week, everything's against you because it's not on schedule. But everything will be for you if you just schedule it. And I said this, sometimes they can't go simply because they have something else scheduled. And I've seen that happen so many times. Hey, Pastor Ty, I wish you would have told me that this was going on because my mom scheduled me to go to X, Y, and Z, and I have to go to X, Y, and Z. So just make sure that you get it on schedule. So first one is partner with the children's pastor. 2, plan an invite night after a big event at the church. 3, incentivize who comes back. 4, get it on the schedule. And 5, invite your senior pastor. Okay, this is a secret card. People don't know about this card, and I'm going to play this card. I'm going to show you why you want to play this one. When you invite your senior pastor to preach at the youth ministry, your senior pastor is going to announce it the Sunday before he's preaching. Hey, parents, I just want you to know I'm bringing the word this week. All the parents are like, okay, Pastor's getting behind it. Man, I want the pastor to talk to my kid. I want the pastor to talk to my daughter. Let me get Pastor so-and-so there to pray for my son and daughter, because usually on the weekend they're preaching about all these other things, but they're preaching specifically to my young person. Oh, I'm going to make sure I'm going to bring my student to that. Why? Because the pastor of the house is speaking to the young people of the house. When you get the pastor's voice on it, you get the parents' attention to it. If you decide to invite every senior pastor except your own, parents don't care about every other senior pastor. They really, really don't. If you think I'm lying, go walk up to the average parent of your church, tell them your favorite preacher, and watch how confused they look. They're going to be like, who is that? Wow, that's a good illustration. I don't care about that person. I care about my senior pastor that's been leading me, helping me, guiding me, shepherding me. I would love for that voice to be a voice that my young person, that my son, that my daughter can hear. Yes, I'm going to make sure that my student is there. So you invite the senior pastor to it. One, you get the parents. Then two, now you get the senior pastor's eyes on it. Now he shows up. He's like, y'all got some old toys. Y'all need some new toys. Man, this building looks kind of raggedy. Man, we need to update these screens. Man, I didn't know every week this is what it looked like. Hey, let's get an updated paint job. Instead of you trying to beg for it every week, now the senior pastor sees it. And now that they see it, they want to give to it. They want to help empower it. They want to invite more eyes into it. They want to go invite more volunteers into it, invite more leaders into it. And now on Sunday, when they preach about whatever God puts on their heart, they're going to remember, hey, this past Wednesday, I was preaching at this youth ministry. Let me say this, parents, there's a move of God going on. You need to invite them. Forget Ashbury Revival. No disrespect. I thought it was great. But we're having a revival of our own in our Wednesday night youth group. And this is free publicity. You want to know why? Because you invited your senior pastor. And you can do that for free. That's the beauty of it. Hey, he already works at the church. You don't have to give him honorarium. All you got to do is give him time to do what he's going to do, what she's going to do, and it's going to bless the ministry. Okay? Number 6. Another thing that you can do to grow your youth ministry, exemplify it. Exemplify inviting students to church. Has your leaders ever seen you invite a young person to church? Or are you just asking them to do it all the time? Because I think a lot of times we expect things that we've never exemplified. And once we do that, we just invite confusion because we're asking them to do something they've never seen before. I think on Sundays, if you're a youth pastor, you need to make your job inviting every young person you see. Every young person you see, well, we don't have a big church. Well, it seems like that should be easy for you to do then. Every young person you see, you need to walk up to them and you say, hey, my name is Pastor so-and-so. Would love to invite you to our youth ministry. Did you know about our youth ministry? Oh, yeah, we do know about it. Well, you need to actually come here. Let me get your phone number. Get their phone number. Call them right there and make sure they have their phone number. You lock them in front of them. They lock you in front of you. And then you text them following up saying, hey, come on Wednesday nights. Let's do that every Sunday. Exemplify it. Show your leaders what to do instead of telling your leaders what to do. At the end of the day, I'm always going to do what I see my leader do. I'm never going to do what I hear my leader say, because we learn by watching our leader steps, not by listening to our leader statements. So it doesn't matter what you tell them. It doesn't matter what you're telling your leaders. Hey, invite the students you see. If they haven't seen you invite the students you see, they're not going to do it. So as a leader, ask yourself this tough question. And I remember asking myself this in February of 2019. Tyshone, you've been a youth pastor almost a month. You haven't invited anyone to the youth ministry. Why? Oh, because I thought someone else was going to do it. That's what I thought. Well, Tyshone, you are that someone, so do it every week. Make sure you're inviting people. So every Sunday, I exemplified it. And then eventually, I told my leaders, hey, guys, I need you to invite people every Wednesday. I remember telling my leaders all the time every Sunday, hey, I need you to invite some people to church, because they saw me doing it every Sunday. At one point, I became militant with it. And I told them, I said, hey, guys, I need you to invite 3 to 5 students every Sunday. And I need you to get their number. And I need you to send me their number. And I'm going to text them to see if they really met you. I ain't playing. I wasn't leading no fake ship. It was real. I wanted to make sure they were inviting students. But why did I do that? Because I knew I exemplified it, and I knew that I explained it, so it was safe for me to expect it. You can't expect something that you didn't explain and you don't exemplify. But once you know, hey, I exemplified this, I've explained this, now I expect you to do it. This is what being a leader is. It's inviting students, not on your Instagram the hour before Wednesday, the hour before the service saying, hey, come to youth. That don't do nothing. They don't even see it. You post it, only 32 people saw it. No, it's better to say every Sunday, I'm going to invite students when I see them. Hey, Are you enjoying this podcast? I really enjoyed recording it. I want to also make you aware of a resource that I have just for youth pastors or youth leaders that are teaching or preaching to young people. It is a course called How to Preach to Gen Z. I took about 4 or 5 hours just to put it together for you. And if you want it, go ahead. The link is in my description. It's also in my link tree. And I pray it blesses you or maybe someone that you know. Now get back to listening to that phenomenal podcast. And hey, that's an anointed man of God, ain't he? Last but not least, number 7. Do you teach your students to invite people to church? That's a question I want to ask you. Do you actually, when was the last time you asked your students to invite people to church? Not because they were going to get something at the end, but have you taught them to invite people to church because the person they're inviting is going to get something at the end? They'll get salvation. They'll get a hope in Jesus Christ. They'll get a faith. They'll get around like-minded people. They'll learn kingdom principles. Have you taught your young people the power of the invitation? You know, I remember being taught this one thing I'll never forget. I was at church during a conference, and at the time, I just wanted to be like, I think I was 14 years old, and I was like, one day I want to be like Bishop Jakes, you know, I want to go around the world. And this preacher that was preaching, she said something that stuck with me since I was 14. She was like, some of you want to go around the world, but you can't even go across the street. And I was like, oh, Jesus, that's for me, because I wasn't going across the street. She was like, have you asked your neighbor, do they know Jesus? I know you want to tell the world about Jesus, but have you asked your neighbor? She didn't assume that I knew about it. Instead, she took initiative and she taught me right then and there that I have the power to go across the street. I have the power to tell my neighbor. I have the power to invite my friend into church. I don't know why I thought that power was regulated when I turned 30. I didn't know why I thought I couldn't do it right then and there, but her teaching unlocked something, an awareness that I didn't even know that I could do. Hey, I can invite people to church. And I think as youth pastors, we need to make sure that we're teaching people to invite people to church, not just invite their friend just to get something at the end. That's why I think these giveaways oftentimes are incentivizing the wrong thing. Like we're teaching people, you know, accidentally that if you invite your friend to church, you're going to get something at the end, you know? So even you inviting them is more about how they can get something for you versus like, you know what? Jesus is so good and he's so great. Everyone should know about him. And there's a place that we know every week that talks about him. And I want to invite my friends to that. I'm going to invite my friends to church. I'm going to do a series. If I was a youth pastor right now, I would do a series, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, where I just talk about the power of inviting people to church, to talk about the power of inviting someone into your world and the things that you learn and the benefits that come with that. Let's not just assume these young people know. Let's actually teach them the power of invitation. And I'll tell you why, because if you teach them right now at 11 to be inviting people to church every week, how many people they're going to invite to the youth ministry? How many people will they invite to church over a lifetime? Over a lifetime. I don't know how many people I've invited to church. I'm in the hundreds, not to brag, but I'm in the hundreds. I should be in the thousands, but these last few years I was working on preaching. That was my problem. I should have been working on inviting people more. But I think we're not just training young people for our youth ministry. We're training young people for the ministry of God touching young people, the ministry of God making an impact in this world, the ministry of Jesus Christ being at work, that when we lift up his name and people surround his name, that people get saved. We're inviting people into this beautiful process. And I think we need to do a good job as youth pastors to teach our young people to invite people to church. And so if you do these 7 things, I am not saying that your youth ministry overnight is going to go from 100 to 1,000. But I will say this, if your youth ministry is at 50, so I don't even want to talk to the person matter of fact, I'll go lower. If your youth ministry, I met someone the other day who told me he had 4 people in his youth ministry. And I looked at him, I said, you better know all 4 of their names. Hey, don't judge those 4. We all start somewhere. But let's just say you only have 4 young people in your youth ministry. I actually do believe that if you partner with your children's pastor, you plan to invite nights around the big initiatives of the church. You incentivize those who come back instead of those who comes first. You get it on the schedule, all the events that you're going to do throughout the year, all the times you're going to meet, all the times you're not going to meet, when camp is, when conference is, all those fun things. 5, invite your senior pastor into it. 6, exemplify inviting people. And 7, teaching your young people to invite people. I'm not going to say you're going to go from 4 to 400 in a year, but I have good faith to say that you'll go probably from 4 to 30 over a year. I really do think that. I think if you're at 100 right now and you do these things over the next 2 years, I think you can be at 150 or 200. One of the things I didn't say with my hair that I wanted to say with your youth ministry as we're concluding, as the piano comes up, I'll close my Bible. That's how you know I'm serious. I have my laptop in front of me too. I don't know if you can see it, but when I wanted to grow my hair out, I had to come to the grips with reality that it was going to take about 2 to 3 years to get my hair to do exactly what I wanted to do. And now that I've grown my hair out, it's pretty long. Like I really like it. It's like, I got some curls back here. I got some growth and stuff, but it's really not as long as I want it to be, because it's probably going to take another year to 2 years for my hair to get where I've already pictured it to be at. I know I can't force it. I can't. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to enjoy the journey of growth. I'm just going to enjoy it. Some days my hang time is going to be here, but then the next time it's going to be there. And then the next 3 years will probably be right here. It's going to take time. So in between now and then, all I'm going to do, I'm going to take care of this hair. I'm going to moisturize it. I'm going to condition it. I'm going to shampoo it. I'm going to line it up when it comes necessary. But I'm not going to force anything, because at the end of the day, I can't control anything. And let me tell you this, just like my hair, there's a lot of things you could do for your youth ministry. You can water it. You can sow some good things into it. Make sure you're being a good steward of it. But you cannot control when it grows. So have fun. Let's pull the pressure away. When you make your youth pastor job solely about numbers, it ceases to be about pastoring. It really does. And I think we're living in that age, if we're not careful, it's more about numbers than it is about names. We want to know how many do you have in your youth ministry, instead of the stories of those that have come to your youth ministry and how they've been changed, the leaders that have come through your youth ministry and how they've been developed. Let's make our ministry, in the meantime, until you get to the number that you really want to get at, let's just get to know their names. Let's enjoy the journey. Let's know that it's going to take time. Let's not be jealous about each other. Let's just know at the end of the day, like Paul wrote, we're just servants, okay? Some of us are preachers, some of us are leaders, some of us are planters, some of us are waterers. But at the end of the day, it's God that makes it grow. We are but servants, and good servants at that best. So I want to thank you for listening this week. Make sure before you go to like, subscribe, comment, send this to someone that you think has a struggling youth ministry. You don't say anything else. So, hey man, I was listening to this and I went to your youth ministry. Feel like you need this. It's a nice insult, but it's a blessing on the other side. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.